Hi, good morning. This is Miss Everhart, and I am coming to you this morning to talk to you about differentiating in your classroom and what that could be looking like. And every time I present about differentiating, people get all excited and they want to know more about the topic. But the biggest question that I get asked is, can you show us some practical examples of what this looks like? So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through some of the things that I do in my classroom and how I use it to differentiate. But what I want you to know is that differentiating is just as individual for you as a teacher as it is for the students. So the things that I show you in this video are not meant to be like, all right, you have to do this to differentiate. They may work for you, they may not work for you. You have to find what works best for you and your students in your classroom. So today is just to give you some ideas of what this could look like. First thing that I'm going to recommend for you is a great resource is, first of all, slidesmania.com. They have a ton of free Google Slides templates that also work as PowerPoint templates. And I know a lot of educators are already using Google Slides or PowerPoints in their daily instruction. So why not go to Slidesmania just to spice things up? They have a great tab called By Edu for Edu, and that's actually where I found the first thing that I'm going to recommend for you. If you're going to differentiate your instruction, a critical part of that is that you know where your kids' levels are. You know what they're able to do at any given point in time, and you want to be able to reference that. Now, I don't know about you, but I suck at trying to keep a ton of papers with me and remember who it is. I'm not great at keeping those digital portfolios or a portfolio in person. And with COVID, it's been even harder to keep paper records of how my students are doing. So this template that I'm showing you right now has been an absolute lifesaver. This is called a student information binder by Miss Melissa Jenkins. And again, I found it on slidesmania.com. And what I have done with this is I have changed the numbers to be my student names. And then on each slide, what I do is I personalize this. First of all, again, I change the number to be the student name. I take out all of this. I don't really care about all this information. I can find that in my gradebook. What I want to store in these slides is I want to store information. Does my student have an IEP goal? Does my student have specific accommodations? What exactly am I looking at? And then as I grade all of my students' work, and yes, I know that's a hot topic. Should you grade everything? I personally choose to. The reason I do that is I do value what they're doing, and I want to make sure I hold my own self accountable for going back and looking at what the students did. It also boosts their grades up over the long run because if they're completing their work, they have a lot higher grades than if they do a little bit here, but then they miss a lot, and then they've got a lot of zeros. So I like to just put a grade on everything. It really does give my students accountability, and it also ensures that I'm looking over everything. My kids are getting immediate feedback. And what I do with that is as I'm grading and looking at their things, I'm making notes. Okay, student A was able to get 3 out of 5 context clues today. That's progress. And I can see that progress documented over time because maybe tomorrow he only gets 2 or the next day he gets 5. So I'm able to see just how up and down the student is going with any given skill that I'm looking at. It's also amazing when I have progress reporting time and parents want to know how they're doing. I can, instead of saying, oh, well, they have such and such grade in my class, I can immediately look back and without having to go find a bunch of papers, I can look back, I can see the data on my student because all I have to do is go to their little tab, click on their number, whatever it is, and then I can read what I have written about that student's progress. And it's all in one spot. This is an amazing template. And by the way, just in case you were thinking, I am not this type A planning kind of person. Like I said, I will be the first to admit I'm horrible at keeping up with student materials and data tracking. That's not my forte. But this has been a brilliant lifesaver for me this year. It's actually really helped with special ed progress reporting at the 9 weeks period. And anytime a parent or a teacher asks, hey, how are they doing with this skill? What do you recommend? Again, I have all their data right at my fingertips. And then I can just duplicate the slides as many times as I need to for that particular student. So great resource. That's the first thing I'm going to recommend. If you are going to differentiate, you need to have a system in place for how you're going to monitor what that kid is doing. Because if you do not know your kid's levels and you can't say where they're at, then differentiating isn't necessarily going to be that beneficial for you. Another thing that I want to state, so I'm going to show you a sample lesson, and this lesson is actually the story that we use is from ReadWorks. So I will show you ReadWorks as well as an amazing resource. In my classroom, one of the things that is really super important is every student is exposed to the same content. Okay, so everybody kind of goes off on this. Well, if you're differentiating, everybody gets something different. Yes and no. So I want my highs, my middles, and my lows to all have access to the same content. So one of the things that's really important to me is that during the school day, I give them all the same lesson. This is an example of something that I would expect them to do. Now, I have moved this passage down to on the average reading level of my students. So I picked a passage that most of my students should be able to read with minimal help. Okay. But then the questions, that's usually where it gets tricky, because even if a student's able to do this, then, the questions are a little bit harder. And yes, we do teach them to use their tech tools where it allows them to have the questions read to them. I am fully aware that not all of my students will be able to access this, but I want them exposed to it. And then I make it a point that every day we are going to go through and we're going to check our answers to this. And I'm going to model my thinking. So after I give my students some time to think through, to process, to try their best, then we go back as a group and we get to discuss it. Now, the lesson that I can't show you because of copyright reasons, we do teach using the Reading by Design program in my classroom. And I'm not allowed to show you that lesson per copyright, but I will say this. One thing that I do is I give my students exposure. This is an example of some of the different words that they might be having to read and code during their individual group's lesson. I know that my lower students are not going to be able to read this word like quiet. Okay? That's not the point that I'm giving it to them. I'm not giving it to them so that they get frustrated. What is important to me is that all of my students, whether they're low, middle, or high learners, have exposure to the grade level content that I want them to be able to do. Okay? So again, I give all of my students a copy of this, and it does have some easier words like mill and like is. And my lower level students are absolutely able to recognize a couple of these. Then they're practicing the skill. In this case, I want them to be able to code the words. So they're getting to do this. As a whole group, then we go over and we talk about these words and we talk about how we code them. And then my lower level students are being exposed to this content, even if they can't read this word quiet right now, or even the word cats. If they can't read it right now, they've been exposed to it. And by the time I get their group to this point, they have seen it, and it's going to be that much easier for them to access. So it's really, really, really important. Again, when you're differentiating, you're not saying, oh, I'm sorry, you're too low, you cannot do this content. That's bull. You do want to give them the same grade level content that you would give anybody else. Then after you've done that, so I've given my students at this point their station where we're all reading the same story, we're all answering the same questions, and we're working through the same focus. In this case, we were talking about theme and we were talking about bravery. And I've given them exposure to a little bit from all of the groups. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to meet with each group individually. And this is where my differentiation really comes into play. So I do have a lower group, a middle group, and a higher group. And then within my program, I am teaching 3 different lessons. So I have a lower group lesson, and then I have a middle group lesson and a higher group lesson. And this is where I meet with their groups to build on skills that they are ready for, which means that my higher group today would be coding words like quiet and reading things with the QU sound. My middle group would probably be working right here with this double L's, if we double the L's at the end, or we double the F's at the end of the words, and we'll work on that. My lower level groups are probably going to be working on some basic sight words like is, and that's okay. Because now when they're in their group, they feel safe. They're practicing skills that they are ready for. And this is where they get to work a little bit more on building up their skills. And this is where I get my remediation in. So yes, I do individualize my groups. And yes, I do have individual mini lessons. And I encourage you as a core content or even as an elective, where are your kids lacking? And what kind of mini lesson can you do for them that's going to build them up again to where you want to be? Now, I emphasize over and over and over again, I did not just give them content on their level. I did give them grade level content that I expect my entire class to be able to do. With that, again, it's super important that you have the understanding. Yes, it's going to be frustrating for some. No, they're not going to get everything, but it's okay. We are exposing them to what we want them to be able to do. And then after they are practicing with this and working with this, they do have your support. You're not leaving them hanging. Like I said, I go over every single thing with my class every day so that they know what the thinking process is. And every day they get a little bit better. And I can see that because I'm tracking it inside my student data binders. So that's the huge thing. I do recommend make little mini lessons. You've got to meet your kids where they're at. Okay. Again, if you have, let's say, for example, an 8th grade level kid, and this 8th grader cannot read at a 2nd grade level. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. We can't just give them 8th grade stuff and expect that one day they're going to wake up and suddenly be able to do 8th grade stuff when they've never mastered even 4th or 5th grade stuff. We have to go back and we have to give them the material at a more accessible level for them. But the key with that is, one, you're willing to do that, and two, you're still showing them stuff that's on their level, stuff of where they want to be. You're letting them practice the harder things, but you're also giving them those opportunities for success by going back and remediating those skills. And if you don't do that, then let's be real here. What's going to happen is year after year after year, we're just going to pass them on. They're going to get further and further and further behind. And all that does is it makes the next teacher frustrated because they're so behind. And what the heck were we doing in years past? It's got to stop somewhere. Okay. You can be the teacher. You can be the teacher who can step up and find a way to remediate your kid. And yes, I do believe it is on you. And yes, like I said, I'm teaching at least 3 different groups. I believe right now I have, in one of my classes, I have 5 different groups. Why? Because I have kids at 5 different levels, and that's okay. That is okay. Also, too, remind yourself, guys, the initial creation process, just doing this, you only got to do it once, and then you have the resources for year after year, because you know you're still going to have kids that come to you that are behind. Okay, so there's my pet peeve and my spiel on why we should differentiate. Now, if you've done all that, then I do want to show you a couple of great, easy resources. First of all, ReadWorks is an amazing material. ReadWorks is going to allow you to pick a reading level for your kid. So if you know that you have a 6th grader that reads on a 2nd grade level, you can come in and you can pick some 2nd grade level stories for your student. Okay? And here we have 578 items. That's just picking a 2nd grade story. What I love about it is in a lot of districts, you already know their Lexile level because you're doing reading level testing anyway, and you can lower it or increase it to whatever level you need. And then again, it will filter those. Now I still have 222 items that are between a 0 and 600 Lexile. I can choose what type of reading I want. I can choose whether I want a science story or a social studies story. I can choose something that has any kind of questions I can think of. These are amazing, ReadWorks offers everything to teachers for absolutely free. Okay. I will say that in my department, we use ReadWorks religiously. It has so many great stories. And even if you used a story a day, you're really not going to run out. It's an amazing resource. It does make everything very easy. The other thing I'm going to say is if you have not already, Pear Deck and or Nearpod, I am personally on the Pear Deck boat, but I recognize the good things that Nearpod has to offer as well. Pear Deck integrates seamlessly within Google Slides. So let me pull up a Google Slides presentation and just show you all the different things that you can do. So I've added a Google Slides add-on. I'm going to go ahead and pull back up my Rosa Parks presentation for you. And so under my add-ons, I do have this Pear Deck icon. When I click on Pear Deck, I'm able to take any of my slides and I can make them a text slide where my students will have to type an answer. I can make a multiple choice question. I can have them type a number. I can have them draw. I can make a draggable activity, and I can even insert a website or a video, which has been great in pandemic teaching, having the videos that we incorporate. And if you don't know what you want to do, they even have a template library that has all kinds of subjects and all kinds of ideas. Again, I'm an ELAR teacher, and so here I see all the different types that I could use. And what I love about these is you can change them. You can take out things. You can easily add it. But everything is like, if I don't want this box, I can delete it. I can change it however I want. Okay, I can even take out that. You can change any of these Pear Deck templates however you want to. That's not something you can say for other programs. So Pear Deck is an amazing resource, and I use Pear Deck a lot. I can also tell you how other teachers use Pear Deck. It's been used with so many different content areas in my school. Most of us are choosing Pear Deck at this point because it's so easy to use and it allows the students to work. All right, finally, I want to show you Bookit because Bookit is an amazing resource where the students get to play a quick game. And you can practice with questions. I have created my own here, but you can also search for what other people have done. And then what is great about Bookit that's not like Kahoot or other games is your kids don't have that time limit. So your students who need a little bit more time to process through things, they have that. The other thing that I love is you set a time limit for your game. I usually set 7 minutes, and then for that entire 7 minutes, your students are practicing however many questions are in your question set. So when I had 10 questions, they get those same 10 questions over and over. It's great for the repetitive aspect. When you want them to really remember something, they're able to do that. And again, there's so many other resources you can use to differentiate. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and what works for me might not work for you. But hopefully you found something good in this video to help you. And if not, then please feel free to email me at kristen.everhart@lockhart.texed.net or find me on Twitter at aheart4teaching. I look forward to connecting with you and hearing from you soon, and I look forward to hearing all the amazing ways you're choosing to differentiate in your classroom.